January 7, 2026, in the South China Sea. The USS Abraham Lincoln was right where Beijing didn't want an impressive nuclear supercarrier. 1,090 feet of American steel cutting through waters. China claims, no apologies, just showing up. The morning air was thick with humidity. Waves rolling gently round. Tension buzzed on the carrier. Even with that calm vibe, an MH-6OS Seahawk helicopter lifted off, its rotors cutting through the humid air, ferrying cargo from the supply ship USNS Cesar Chavez. Cargo nets swung below, loaded with fuel, ammo, food, and spare parts, everything to keep the strike group running smoothly. The Combat Information Center was buzzing thousands of miles from home. Radar operators tracked every ship and aircraft within 200 miles, glowing like digital icons. The room was dim, lit by soft green and blue lights. Sailors moved confidently, while engineers monitored the two nuclear reactors. Aviation fuel handlers were getting ready for the next launch cycle. Cooks prepared meals for 5,680 personnel. Every system functioning as designed. But this wasn't routine. Not really. Because 900 meters to the west, Chinese naval planners were watching, tracking, calculating. Chinese surveillance aircraft had been shadowing the strike group for days, maintaining a respectful distance, but never losing visual contact. Shore-based radars painted the carrier's position constantly. Satellites passed overhead every few hours, photographing the deck layout, aircraft configuration, and escort positioning. And according to a new Pentagon report preparing for something far bigger than anyone expected, the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group Con-7 and her 3 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers had been operating in the Philippine Sea since mid-December after departing from Guam. The destroyers maintained a protective screen around the carrier positioned at strategic points to intercept threats from any direction. The USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. DDG-1-1 steamed ahead of the formation, or Spy-1D. Radar sweeping the sky in continuous arcs. USS Spruce DDG-111 held the starboard flank, while USS Michael Murphy DDG-112 guarded the port side. Each destroyer carried 96 vertical launch shells, loaded with a mix of SM-to-surface-to-air missiles, SM-6 anti-aircraft missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and anti-submarine rockets. Together, they formed a layered defense system, capable of engaging threats at ranges exceeding 100 miles, tracking dozens of targets simultaneously and coordinating responses through data links that connected every ship, aircraft, and sensor in the strike group to a single integrated network. Now, in early January, the formation pushed deeper into the South China Sea, conducting live-fire weapons exercises that included testing the carrier's phalanx, close-in weapon system. The 20mm Gatling guns roared across the flight deck, sending a clear message. We're here, we're armed, and we're not leaving. Flight operations continued without pause. F-35C Lightning to south, the carrier-based variant of the Joint Strike Fighter, launched and recovered in steady rotation. The Abraham Lincoln had been the first carrier in the Pacific Fleet able to operate the F-35C after her massive 4-year overhaul completed back in 2017. From the bridge, the commanding officer, Captain Daniel J. Keeler, observed the controlled chaos of carrier operations. His crew of 3,200 sailors plus the 2,480 personnel of the embarked air wing worked in perfect synchronization, a floating city projecting power thousands of miles from home. But why here and why now? The answer lies in what China is building and how fast they're building it. According to the Pentagon's latest annual report on Chinese military capabilities released in late 2025, Beijing plans to construct 6 additional aircraft carriers over the next 10 years. That's 1 new carrier roughly every 20 months through 2035. If successful, China's carrier fleet would expand from 3 to 9 aircraft carriers. That would bring the People's Liberation Army-Navy closer to parity with the United States in the Pacific, a region where America has maintained naval dominance since World War II. At the Dalian shipyard, work on China's 4th aircraft carrier designated Type 004 was already visible on satellite imagery. Commercial satellite photos showed a massive hull taking shape in a covered dry dock, protected from overhead surveillance, but impossible to completely hide. The sheer scale of the construction indicated something larger than China's previous carriers. Analysts noted structural features closely resembling those found on U.S. nuclear-powered carriers. The whole configuration suggested preparations for a nuclear reactor, which would represent a massive technological leap for China. Nuclear propulsion requires sophisticated engineering not just in the reactor itself, but in radiation shielding, cooling systems, refueling procedures, and crew training. Only 2 nations currently operate nuclear-powered carriers. United States and France. If China succeeds, it would join an exclusive club and fundamentally change the balance of power in the Pacific. Meanwhile, at the Jiangnan shipyard in Shanghai, reports indicated construction may have begun on a fifth carrier, likely an improved version of the Fujian, China's most advanced domestically developed carrier, which President Xi Jinping himself formally commissioned in November 2024. The Fujian marked a significant milestone. China's first carrier equipped with electromagnetic catapults, the same technology used on America's newest Ford-class carriers. Electromagnetic catapults allow for faster launch rates, reduced stress on aircraft, and the ability to launch heavier planes with more fuel and weapons. It's a game-changing technology that took the United States decades to develop, and China has now mastered it. The War Zone, a respected U.S. military website, stated, "The structure closely resembles features found on U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and there is broad consensus that what we are seeing is connected to the future installation of a nuclear reactor." Nuclear propulsion changes everything. It allows for far greater operational range and potentially global deployment. A conventionally powered carrier must refuel every few weeks, requiring either port visits or underway refueling from tanker ships. Operations that limit speed, flexibility, and operational tempo. A nuclear carrier, by contrast, can operate indefinitely. The USS Abraham Lincoln can steam at maximum speed for over 20 years without refueling. That means sustained high-speed transit across oceans, unlimited time on station, and the ability to operate in areas where refueling ships cannot safely reach. That is why all 11 U.S. aircraft carriers are nuclear-powered. But the carriers are only part of the story. The Pentagon report has confirmed for the first time the deployment of China's Dongfang 27 intercontinental ballistic missile, nicknamed East Wind of 5,000 to 8,000 kilometers. The conventionally armed DF-27 can be used not only as an anti-ship ballistic missile in the Pacific, but it can also strike targets within the United States itself. China's nuclear stockpile had grown to more than 600 warheads by the end of 2024, and the People's Liberation Army remains on track to field more than 0 nuclear warheads by 2030, the report stated. For context, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute estimated the United States possessed 378 nuclear warheads at the beginning of 2025. And perhaps most concerning, the Pentagon report outlined a specific timeline for a potential Chinese campaign against Taiwan. According to the assessment, the People's Liberation Army is making steady progress towards its 2027 objectives, which include the ability to achieve a decisive victory over Taiwan, establish a strategic counterbalance to the United States, including in nuclear terms, and exercise deterrence and control over countries in the region. In other words, the report stated, China believes it will be capable of fighting and winning a war over Taiwan by the end of 2027. The war did not conclude that such a war is inevitable, but the preparations are unmistakable, which brings us back to the Abraham Lincoln. Her deployment wasn't announced in advance. Pentagon rarely discloses carrier movements for such security reasons, but word typically surfaces quickly. This time, Kun-7 departed San Diego in late November with almost no fanfare. By December, she had arrived in Guam, part of a U.S. homeland and critical logistics hub for forward-deployed military operations in the Indo-Pacific. During that port call, Rear Admiral Toddy Wen, commander of the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, stated, "Our strike group presence in 7th Fleet waters demonstrates our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Port calls to strategic locations like Guam enhance our mission's readiness and helps us stay ready to execute maritime operations in theater." Translation: we're here, we're staying, and we are ready. The Abraham Lincoln, of course, wasn't alone. Other U.S. Navy assets operating in the region included the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, hosting the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit in the East China Sea with F-35B Lightning to south, MV-2B Ospreys, AH-1Z Vipers, and UH-1Y Venoms embarked. Fast attack submarines including the USS Sea Wolf, USS Greenville, and USS Annapolis operating silently beneath the surface. The carrier USS George Washington, the Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier based in Yokosuka, Japan, though currently pier-side for maintenance through at least mid-2026. The Abraham Lincoln Strike Group consisted of CVN-72 and 3 guided missile destroyers, the Frank E. Peterson Jr., DDG-1-1, USS Spruce, DDG-1111, and USS Michael Murphy DDG-112, each destroyer being equipped with Aegis combat systems capable of tracking and engaging multiple air and missile threats simultaneously. The Aegis system represents one of the most sophisticated air defense networks ever created. Its Spy-1 radar can track more than 100 targets at once, automatically prioritizing threats based on speed, altitude, trajectory, and probability of impact. The system calculates intercept solutions in milliseconds, guiding missiles towards targets with remarkable accuracy. Each destroyer itself displaces 9,100 tons fully loaded and measures 509 feet in length. They're powered by four gas turbine engines, capable of pushing them to speeds exceeding 30 knots, fast enough to keep pace with the carrier and reposition rapidly when threats emerge. Together, they deform a defensive perimeter around the carrier, a floating fortress designed to project power while defending itself from submarines, aircraft, missiles, and surface threats. The destroyers operate in zones, creating overlapping fields of fire that ensure no attack vector goes undefended. On January 8th, the strike group conducted live fire weapons drills, and the exercise began at 0900 hours, with the carrier altering course to position itself for optimal firing angles. The Phalanx Sea-Whiz, a radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun system designed to shoot down incoming anti-ship missiles, fired across the carrier's flight deck in rapid bursts. The sound was deafening, mechanical roar that echoed across the water. Each round traveled at 3,000 feet per second, capable of destroying targets within seconds. The weapon system cycled through 4,500 rounds per minute. That's 75 rounds every second. The barrels glowed orange hot as tracer rounds arced outward, creating visible streams of fire against the blue sky. The Fells tracked and engaged drone targets towed at high speed across the formation's front. Within seconds, multiple drones were shredded, torn apart by concentrated bursts of 20mm tungsten penetrator rounds designed to defeat hardened missile bodies. The system is fully automated. Once activated, it detects, tracks, and engages threats without human input. Sensors identify incoming objects, calculate threat probability, and fire without waiting for authorization. It's the carrier's last line of defense, and watching it fire is a reminder of how close modern naval combat operates to catastrophe. An anti-ship missile traveling at Mach 2 covers 1 mile every 0.3 seconds. From the moment it appears on radar to impact is often less than 30 seconds. There is no time for hesitation, no time for debate, just automated systems making split-second decisions at speeds human brains cannot match. Flight operations continued throughout the day. F-35C stealth fighters launched from the deck, their advanced sensors feeding real-time data back to the carrier. Each jet is capable of carrying precision-guided munitions, air-to-air missiles, and anti-ship weapons, making them effective against aircraft, ships, and ground targets alike. The Abraham Lincoln can carry up to 90 fixed-wing and rotary aircraft, though typical deployments include around 60 or 70. Her flight deck, approximately 4.5 acres, served by for steam catapults and for hangar elevators, allowing rapid launch and recovery cycles. Operating a carrier at sea requires extraordinary coordination. The 5,680 sailors and Marines aboard consented to work around the clock in shifts maintaining propulsion, weapon systems, radar arrays, communications networks, aviation fuel storage, food prep, medical facilities, and even more. It's a city that never sleeps and never stops moving. The Abraham Lincoln has been doing this for over 3 decades. Her keel was actually laid back on November 3, 1984 at Newport News, Virginia. She was launched in 1988 and delivered to the Navy in 1989. Since then, she's conducted multiple combat deployments, humanitarian missions, and freedom of navigation operations across the globe. Just 2 years after entering service, CVN-72 was ordered on her first Western Pacific deployment in response to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm in 1991. While en route to the Indian Ocean, she was diverted to support evacuation operations following the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. The carrier led Operation Fiery Vigil, the largest peacetime evacuation of active-duty military personnel and family members in history. A 23-ship flotilla, commanded by the Abraham Lincoln, successfully evacuated 20,000 people to safety. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the Lincoln participated in Operation Southern Watch, Vigilant Sentinel, and Iraqi Freedom. She returned to the Persian Gulf repeatedly, maintaining a presence and projecting power when called upon. In 2013, the carrier entered a midlife refueling and complex overhaul, a 49.5-month process during which more than 0.5 million man-hours were spent upgrading her systems. She rejoined the fleet in May 2017, becoming the first carrier able to operate F-35C Joint Strike Fighters. In August of 2021, Captain Amy Barnes-Schmidt took command of CVN-72, becoming the first woman to command an aircraft carrier in U.S. Navy history. Captain Daniel J. Keeler now commands the ship during this current deployment. The Abraham Lincoln displaces 97,000 tons, measures 1,092 feet in length, and is powered by two nuclear reactors that give her virtually unlimited range. She can operate for over 20 years without refueling, allowing sustained operations anywhere in the world without needing to return to port for fuel. As one of the largest warships in existence, CVN-72 boasts amenities found in American cities: a post office with its own zip code, TV and radio stations, a newspaper, a fire department, a library, a hospital, a general store, and even barbershops. But none of that changes the fundamental reality. She is a warship designed to fight and win. China's claim over the South China Sea is based on what Beijing calls the Nine Line, a boundary that encompasses. China claims about 90% of the South China Sea, even areas far from its coast and near Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei, but international law doesn't back this up. In 2016, a tribunal ruled against China's claims, which they completely dismissed. Since then, they've built artificial islands and challenged ships in the area. The U.S. doesn't recognize China's claims over its territory. To push back, the U.S. Navy regularly sails through disputed waters, showing it's all about freedom of navigation. The Abraham Lincoln was just doing its thing in the South China Sea, operating in neutral waters and sticking to international law. China sees U.S. carrier strike groups in the South China Sea as a provocation, claiming those waters as its own. The U.S. Navy, however, insists these are international waters and will operate freely. This shows support for allies like Taiwan, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. The United States remains committed to maintaining stability in the Indo-Pacific. And second, it sends a message of deterrence to China. Any attempt to seize Taiwan or dominate the region will be met with overwhelming force. The Pentagon's 2027 timeline for Chinese readiness adds urgency to this posture. If Beijing believes that it will be capable of winning a war over Taiwan by the end of 2027, then the next 2 years represent a critical window. And that's why the Abraham Lincoln is there. As of in early January 2026, CVN-72 is cruising the South China Sea and Philippine Sea, staying busy with daily flights, fire drills, and replenishment at sea. China hasn't made any big moves, but its naval and air forces are still patrolling. U.S. and Chinese encounters happen often, and you never know when things might get tense. Things can heat up fast, right? That's why training is key. The Abraham Lincoln crew is always drilling, preparing for what they hope won't happen. Meanwhile, China's cranking out carriers like it's WWI again. If they keep launching one every 20 months, they could hit 9 soon. What do you think? In 2035, should the U.S. boost shipbuilding to stay ahead, or is tech and training enough? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment if you learned something new. Hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories about navies. Share this with anyone who thinks aircraft carriers are just big boats. Want to support our channel even more? Join the fleet. You'll grab loyalty badges, get priority replies, and help us explore real maritime stories. Just hit that join button. Oh, and the USS Abraham Lincoln just reminded us, American carriers don't ask for permission. They operate where they can and never back down. See you next time.